I'd wager you have witnessed someone suffer through a personal dilemma with an answer that seems so obvious, but no matter how much we try to get them to look at what's right in front of them, they just don't get it. Gilbert, or Gustav, is one of those people to many of us. So maybe, to those of you who felt anger seeing the way Gilbert interacts with others, it didn't have to do with the quality of his writing, but maybe because the feelings he evokes are so familiar. And I get it. The treatment towards his wife and daughter, and his justification for it, it's frustrating, let's be honest. He's in the wrong. But the answer isn't so simple for him as it may seem for us.
I can't bear it.
And to explain that, I'll give you some background. But don't worry, I'm not going to get into the entire story of this man. Just a few brief things about what his deal is. Check the description if you want a more in-depth view of his entire backstory. The short version is that this guy was once extremely renowned in his kingdom, so good and so skilled that he was looked up to by many. That Dusker event that everyone talks about throughout the game happened, in which the royal family was presumably killed, leaving Dmitri, the prince, alone. Gustav, Gilbert's true name, rushed to the scene as fast as he could but arrived too late. He was so depressed and distraught that he exiled himself and ran away as his knightly oaths became void. To some, this may seem a bit excessive, but given the kingdom's systems and values, his life's work just ended in a single instant. His reaction is understandable. But what comes after that is the real focus of this video. What Gustav then does is a series of self-punishments that indulge his newly formed, terrible outlook on himself, and copes by using what I call the shoot-yourself-in-the-foot method. He left his family, changed his name, thought he was no longer allowed to smile and have joy, then realized that it was wrong to leave his wife and child behind, got even more depressed, then decided he didn't have the right to get to see them. It's selfish and simply indulgence, so that he doesn't have to confront the problem he created himself.
Not permitted? I think the only one not permitting you joy, dear Gilbert, is yourself.
To make matters even worse, whenever he is confronted about his behavior, he then enters into a self-loathing state where, almost in a subtle and maybe unintentional way, gaslights the person talking to him into feeling bad. He uses his image of himself as an excuse for his behavior. Have you ever talked to somebody like that? That answer is probably yes. Maybe you yourself have done that before. I know I have in the past. Regardless, it's annoying, isn't it? Why do they do this to themselves, when we've given them the answer? Why can't they understand something so simple? It's an easy fix. Why doesn't Gilbert just go back and fix his relationship with his family? Why doesn't he suck it up and apologize for leaving? Why can't he just not be depressed and have the confidence in himself to make things right? That incredibly on-the-nose last question is the answer to this riddle. So let's talk about depression. Now, I don't know the data for other countries, but the USA has gotten a lot better at acknowledging that mental health is a real thing and should be taken seriously. The days of being told to cowboy up when you are feeling down are almost behind us, it seems. With that being said, many around the great states still don't comprehend that when you spend a long enough time in depressed moods, your brain actually reshapes itself for the worse, meaning that it is going to have to take a lot of work and varied amounts of time to really change who you are. This process is known as neuroplasticity, in which our brain forms connections based on what we do. Connections that are used a lot are strengthened. Conversely, ones that aren't used a lot are weakened. This is the general way to think about this. And like I said, this doesn't happen instantaneously. You can't just tell someone to have the confidence to do the right thing if they have spent years with almost no self-esteem. We cannot physically get ourselves to do that in these conditions. Just ask anyone who has been diagnosed with major depressive disorder. So what do? Well, Gilbert shows us some things we can try. Chronic depression should be treated by someone with the skills and the training to do so. Please see someone if you are suffering from this. But to those of you with low self-esteem, pay attention to these. As the majority of my subscribers are in an age group that is riddled with mental health problems, this can help you. And if you are fine, this can help you help others. Something so simple is found between Hanneman and him. The old professor wants to be friends with him and simply shows an interest in getting to know him. This simple and thoughtful act gets Gilbert to smile and laugh. The man who said in the same support line that he isn't permitted to do either of those things. This is enough to fix all his problems alone, but it's small steps like this that improve self-esteem. Wouldn't you feel more valued if someone took notice of a good quality you have and wanted to be around you more? This and many things together can push someone out of a rut. The small and simple things add up. Next up is taking a hobby. Gilbert loves to fish. At first by himself, which can help clear the mind but also can allow you to focus on those negative emotions, which can be counterproductive. The positive shift in this hobby is when he helps Alois with fishing. He takes pride in that, and more importantly, despite how many people criticize the Byleth support, he finds joy teaching children how to fish. Perhaps seeing them smile reminds him of being a father. Perhaps it's something else.
Is that right? I'm sure you share it with your families now.
Gilbert has something to contribute that isn't war and death. He teaches these kids something, and this boosts his confidence, which can lead him to wanting to invite his wife to live with him at the monastery. This is one of the possible endings for him. Now for the elephant in the room you've all been waiting for, his daughter. He starts by avoiding her, spewing out more of his self-hatred nonsense. She wants him to apologize to his wife, but he avoids it, saying that he can't. He still shows that he cares though. He thinks of her and tries to do a thoughtful act in order to please her. Annette calls him out though, letting him know that this can't overwrite his decisions, which crushes Gilbert. What turns things around is when he hands Annette a bundle of letters. While he never sent them, he wrote for every holiday and birthday, showing that he was thinking of his family, dispelling any thought that he despised them in any way. This is very pleasing to Annette, and seeing the happiness in his daughter brings Gilbert into a better position. Does this fix things? Not at all, but it renews his love for his family, which leads him to agreeing to visit his wife after the war, which is an essential step to turning his life around.
I hear you, Annette. I will return without fail. Yes, I promise.
All relationships decay over time, and it takes investment to rebuild them, especially when you push those closest to you away from your life for any reason. So, it is important to put some effort into those relationships so you can feel a renewing of friendship, community, or even love. For personal application, I feel the need to share something personal. Years ago, I had a very low self-esteem and an addiction to video games dominate my life. I couldn't keep a job, gained massive amounts of weight, and couldn't accept myself for who I was. It's a vile trap we get stuck in. When we decide that we cannot love ourselves until we hit this milestone, we can never change with this mindset. How could you change if you didn't believe that you were good enough to do so? You end up like Gilbert here, who just thinks he's terrible, ignoring the qualities he does have. The process that got me out of this slump took years, but it started when my bosses at work complimented me and supported me, and I began to think I was pretty good at my job.
You were unprepared. So many I see right. You were unprepared.
People looked up to me. They recognized qualities I myself ignored, and so I began to acknowledge those myself. While others' kindness can make it way easier, I think we ourselves can find those qualities, like Gilbert and his fishing. You just need to start looking for it, which I did. Maybe you have a video game addiction, or a fast food problem, or anything that's bringing your self-esteem down, but you still do good. You might be really funny. Maybe despite that, you are kind and don't take your bitterness out on others. Maybe you don't have problems keeping a job despite your circumstances, something that many addicts struggle with. Regardless, you can find joy in your life now, as I have. I have found what I want to do and gladly put in the work to get there.
Except I have to read this book.
And you can find that sooner rather than later. You can find that before you become who you want to be. And that will bring you closer and drive you to make those changes yourself. And if you think you are beyond help or that your circumstance is unique and too different to be applicable to this, then look at this guy. If an old man who abandoned his family for years can turn his life around, then someone like you, with their whole life ahead of them, can do it too. Just don't try and change too fast, or you'll get disappointed. Remember that it is the small and simple things that bring the greatest things into our life over time, just as they did for one of the most real characters ever made in a Fire Emblem game.